All right, guys. So, goal for this video is we're gonna get through a couple gods. So last time we ended with Hestia. I kind of got cut off, but she was not a big part of their mythology. Keep that in mind. Huge part of the religion, not a big part of their mythology. Hermes was a big part of their mythology because he's in a lot of stories. Kind of like Athena, though, he plays like a supporting role in a lot of stories. He's also the god by far with the most domains. It's like they looked around, they saw that they didn't have a god of something, and so they just like give it to Hermes. Okay, so what he's most famous for is being the messenger of the gods and the god of commerce and travel and thieves. But then he's also the god of like animal husbandry and roads and hospitalities and heralds and diplomacy and trade and language and writing and persuasion and cunning wiles and athletic contests and gymnasiums and astronomy and astrology. And so all these things, most of which I'm not even sure why they have gods of them, but if you were wondering, it's probably Hermes or Mercury, right? Like he's the god of so many things. Now, what he is famously symbolized by is that winged hat and the winged like sandals or footwear, and then the caduceus, that snake staff that he traded to Apollo, right? So if you've ever ran cross country or track, you've probably seen that shoe with the wings on it. That's like an allusion to Hermes, because he's supposed to be the incredibly quick runner. He's also really, really wise, which is why he's entrusted with delivering the messages for the gods. Now, sometimes he is called a trickster or a master thief, but really that comes down to the fact that he was so smart and so creative when he was like immediately born that he just got bored and he went and like stole this guy's cattle and then gave them back. And so to me, that doesn't really make him that much of a trickster as much as just like a bored kid who did something weird. Okay. He is also someone who guides people to the underworld. And he usually looks really young, probably because he's running all the time. Although there is this one picture up here where he grew out a beard and he looks exactly like Forrest Gump, but there's that. Demeter, we already talked about too. She's a lot like Hestia in that though she's a huge part of their religion, okay, she literally makes stuff grow. So she feeds people, which is a big deal. She's not a big part of their mythology, okay, because there's not a lot of stories about her other than the Persephone story, which I already told you, where she's, again, kind of a supporting role. The only other major story about her is the fact that like Poseidon fell for her for a little bit and created the horse to try and woo her, okay? Mostly not a big part of the stories. Okay, she is the only one that's considered a matron goddess, which means unlike the other goddesses, she is portrayed as a middle-aged married woman. Okay, so she looks quite different than the other guys. I'm not saying that she's not attractive, she just looks different. Okay. Dionysus or Bacchus is the first trickster that we'll come to, and he is a stereotypical trickster. So if I don't finish him on this video, I will pick him up next time. But he is the god of wine and festivities. Okay, so he's the party god. So not my favorite of the gods, but really, really classic picture of a trickster. Because the way Dionysus, his whole story gets set up, is he is the son of Zeus and Semele. And Semele is immortal, so that happens all the time. But typically when you have a god and a human having a baby together, that baby is a demigod. But Dionysus never is. He's always a full-fledged god. And so they try and explain the story a little bit because like his mom always dies in childbirth. And so they try and explain it as that when she's dying, Zeus like rescues the baby from her womb before she dies. So he never actually has a normal human birth. And therefore he is like spared any humanity. Okay. I don't know if that makes any kind of sense, but that's what they say. Either way, he becomes like this really, really popular god. And he's a trickster because he's a god of wine, okay? And so he basically just gets people drunk all the time. And so he'll go into a city, he introduces them to alcohol, they all get drunk, he gets kicked out of the city, he brings it back in, he gets kicked out of the city again. It's like kind of like a cycle kind of story. He also has these crazy followers called the Maenads or the Bacchanades, that are like the party girls of mythology. But just to kind of paint the picture for you of what kind of character he is, these followers will throw these huge parties where they invite everybody to celebrate with them. And then once they get everybody there and they get them all drunk, they proceed to beat them to death with their pine cone tipped staffs. I don't know about you, but I feel like that would be kind of a bummer way to end a party. So, not a redeemable thing at all. In fact, most of the things that he does, they're not redeemable, but he's a trickster. And so he's called the great god Dionysus or the hero god Dionysus. And that's because there are two sides to them, okay? And when he is first born, he does go and he rescues his mom from the underworld. Big deal, okay? And that's a good thing. He's a good son. He also rescues his wife, Ariadne, from Theseus, who abandons her. So he rescues her from that. island where she's been abandoned, marries her. She gets this crown that becomes a constellation. She becomes a goddess. So he's a good son and a good husband and a terrible everything else. But that's what a trickster is. I'll pick